Here's the thing. I'm just going to go ahead and kick off by first thanking everybody for being here today. And we acknowledge the fact that these are very difficult times in our country. And we've gone through uh, other difficult times, but this is different. This is this is much more different. And why did I say this much different? Um, we have a tragedy that is being unleashed all over the country. And we seem to have a leadership that is clueless, that does not understand the gravity of the tragedy that the Nigerians are facing. I'm going to start from the obvious and go into the more classified information that I want to share with you today. Leadership is not just about being in the presidential villa and signing documents and releasing press statements and releasing presidential orders. That is not just about leadership. Leadership is about connecting with the citizens, the people that you're governing. When you're being elected as a leader, your sole responsibility is to ensure the safety and security of people. When you're elected as a leader, okay. When you're elected as a leader, your responsibility is to guarantee the safety and security of the electorate. Just like being hired for a job. If you're hired to do a job and you fail to do the job that you're being hired to do, there are two things that happens, or that there are two options. One, you either resign, or two, you get fired. There's nobody that will be doing such a bad job and will still have to keep their job. In other countries, in other democracy, if you have a mass killing, if you have an incident where those that elected you are victimized or are going through difficult times, it is your responsibility as the leader to go to the various victims, meet them at their point of need, go down to their cities, go down to their local government, go down to their villages, condole with them, hold their hands, talk to them, explain to them why they should start the process of healing. Tell them that you promise to use the instruments of governance, the instruments of government, to ensure that the tragedy that happened to them will never happen to anybody else. Now, the question is, would you be able to stop 100% of all the evil and all the tragedies? No. But one thing your visit with these victims does is that it helps them with the process of healing. It helps them with the process of coming to an understanding that someone else, someone in authority, actually understands and shares their hurt, shares their pain, and understands that they can pick up the phone and call and get some help if possible, because these are tragedies not of their own making. And they start the process of healing. But what happens is that when a leader hears about the electorate going through difficult times, losing loved ones in tragedies that are not of their own making, and the leader ignores those cries, ignores those anguish, those pain, those suffering over and over again, then something is wrong. All across the country, from the north to the south, from the east to the west, there's anguish all over the line. There's pain and suffering. There's been people they've lost loved ones, they've lost their parents, they've lost their mother, they've lost their father, they lost their children, and they are looking for results, they are heartbroken. And what we expect is that the people, the elected leaders that we have, the executive branch that has a responsibility to go and consult with these people, have failed to do that. Now, it begs the question, what is actually happening? Why is the country in such disarray? This did not start today. It started a long time ago. But I'm not going to go all the way back. I'm going to start with the most recent episode. In 2009, Boko Haram, that was, sort of fledgling, under their first leader, the founder, who happens to be Yusuf. He was killed in 2009, and then Shakur took over. So what happened? What happened was that they now forged an alliance with ISIS. ISIS is a global terrorist organization. They've been unleashing mayhem all across the globe, from Iraq to Syria. They've been all over the place. And this is a terrorist organization that the US has dedicated its fighting force to decimate over the last couple of years. So what did this ISIS do? The ISIS organization now forged an alliance with Boko Haram in 2009. And when they forged the alliance, they began to infiltrate not just the grassroots in Nigeria. They started infiltrating our institutions. They started infiltrating our the executive branch, the military, to the extent whereby you have members of ISIS or proxies. And I mean proxies, I mean people that they've been able to convert, people that have been able to brainwash under the guise of the Islamic religion. They've been able to convince these people that they've played. I have to understand something. When a virus like Boko Haram attacks, what it does is it goes after your weakness. And I tell you, Nigeria as a country, we have a lot of weaknesses. We have a lot of weaknesses. We are divided across so many lines. We are divided across ethnic lines. We are divided across religious lines. We are divided across economic lines. To the extent whereby there's no sense of national unity in the country. So we are a perfect target. Nigeria was a perfect target for ISIS to come after. And ISIS exploited all these weaknesses that Nigeria has. They came after our ethnic lines. They brought divisions between Christians and Muslims. They brainwashed the people up north that, hey, that there's a huge problem between Christians and Muslims. So they brainwashed the people in the north to join them in the fight. They recruited a whole bunch of them, whether they're Fulanis and all that. So the problem now was that because of the fault lines, because of the weaknesses in the country, because of the economic difference between the rich and the poor, and not just the poor, but the very poor, and there's so much poverty in the line, they use that also as a recruiting tool to bring people to their ideology, to their Sikh ideology. And when they're able to do that, to show you how sick these people are, they use the guise of being Muslims, being under the Islamic religion. But guess who they're attacking the most? They're attacking the Muslims in the north. They are kidnapping the children. They are killing women and children. So I want to appeal to our Muslim brothers in this room. And if you can also spread the message to our Muslim brothers that the recruitment, the success in recruitment that Boko Haram and the ISIS have been doing and pushing all their ideologies to the Fulani herdsmen, it's not for the sake of Muslim. It's not for the sake of the Islamic religion. Islamic religion is a religion of peace. And these people are using it for their own personal evil ambitions. And what is the ambition? The ambition is to create a terrorist state in Nigeria. The ambition is to create a terrorist state in Nigeria, to put fear in the country whereby they can have their instruments, the components of governance, the components of the Nigerian states under their control. And Nigeria will soft targets, very soft targets. So you look at all the IDP camps, the internally displaced people's camp. Majority of them are in the north. The so-called Muslims, the so-called religion that they are supporting, that they're embracing. They are using that, they're using the umbrella of Muslim to come in, convince and recruit Muslims and use those Muslims to implement their evil ideologies. So we have to do two things. And I'm sharing this with you because this is getting to the end game. In chess, you have the beginning game, you have the middle game, and you have the end game. Right now, we're getting to the end game. And the end game is the total colonization of the Nigerian state by these terrorists. And I'm sharing this with you because this does not start now. It started with the previous administration. And we can say that the onset was difficult to understand. And even the president back then was a bit stunned because of the way these guys they use what they call the asymmetric warfare. Asymmetric warfare where they can use force multipliers, they can attack soft targets, they can brutally kill women and children. And those are not rules of engagement of war. So they've embedded themselves into the previous administration and weakened the Nigerian state. And that infiltration continued to the current administration. And they've embedded themselves solidly into this administration. They've embedded themselves in our institutions, in our military institutions. They've embedded themselves into our political institutions. And we are the only ones that can save the country from total collapse. And we have 2023 to be able to do it. Because if we don't do it, if the previous administration, because they still have some elements of this group still embedded. And when I talk about I'm talking about, let's say, they embedded themselves in the PDP. There are still components of this terrorist group embedded within the PDP. There's a huge substantial element of the APC that, and let me make this clear, I'm gonna put this out there. There are good Nigerians, there's wonderful Nigerians in all parties. There are great Nigerians, wonderful and kind-hearted Nigerians in both PDP and APC. But is this infiltration by these non-state actors that has weakened and turned these parties, that's weaponized these parties, both parties? So what's going to happen? The end game looks like. The end game is by the 2023 election, if either of the parties win, whether the APC or the PDP, those elements that are embedded within these parties will now quickly bring to conclusion the end game that they started. And it will go very, very quickly because the components of those non-state actors in those parties will now, and the thing is, you have to understand, these components of those parties don't even know that they are compromised. They don't know they are compromised. So sometimes they're taking actions that have been passed to them, that have been shared to them by these non-state actors, and they're implementing those actions without even knowing that they are being used to implement actions. that they are being used, that they're actually advancing the cause and the agenda of these non-state actors. So they don't know. And currently, as I speak to you right now, in the current administration, there are people that are in this current administration that don't even know that they are being used, that they are actually working on behalf of these terror organizations, and they're actually in this administration right now. Lots of them, and they don't know. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that they are going to continue perpetuating these actions and this agenda. Either of these parties, whichever comes, happens to win in 2023, it will advance those agendas quickly, and we're going to see a quick end game that will be in favor of these non-state actors. So that is why we have to decide now that first, we need a leader that would heal these are our divisions, because our divisions are being exploited. Our religious differences are being exploited. Our ethnic divisions are being exploited, and our economic divisions are being exploited. So we need a leader in 2023 that will begin to heal these divisions, our economic divisions, our ethnic divisions, our religious divisions. If somebody wants to speak, just raise your hand. Or by the way, if you want to ask a question, go ahead and put your question on the chat. We'll come to the questions after my opening remarks. So if you want to type, just type the question, and we'll come to the question after my opening remarks. So here's the point I'm trying to make. Right now, there are Nigerians that are actually advancing the agenda of these non-state actors, and they don't know it. And whether it's the APC or the PDP, when they get to that point in 2023, if either of them happen to be successful, they will continue advancing this agenda, and that will lead to a quick acceleration of the overall evil agenda of this organization, of these non-state actors. So what can we do from our position? We have to fight. We have to form the firewall to stop this. And the firewall is to make sure that we have the right leadership come 2023. The right leadership that will begin to heal this divide in the country, heal this ethnic divide, the economic divide, and the religious divide. And let people understand, the Muslims and the Christians understand, that this is not a war between Christians and Muslims. This is not a war between the Yorubas or the Igbos, or the Yorubas or the Igbos and the Hausas or the Fulanis. This is not a fight. This is a fight that an enemy from outside has now infused like a virus into the country, and has caused the country to fall into this deep abyss of tragedy. So the next leader will have to heal these wounds, will have to be able to articulate this strategy, and be able to bring people together, because that is the only way we can inoculate. As if if a virus attacks the body, the only inoculation that we can use to avoid the virus from actually doing so much damage to us and to Nigerians is to bridge this, is that national unity. That sense of national unity, that sense of it's not an Igbo problem, it's not a Yoruba problem, it's not an Hausa problem, it's not a Northern problem, it is a Nigerian problem. And we have to look out for one another. And we have to begin to fight for one another. And we have to begin to heal these divisions. And we have to ensure that everybody has the same economic opportunity. to advance, to be able to live, and to be able to raise the family and be able to realize that economic success. So we have to go through that point, because if we don't, and we say, okay, I'm going to give you a scenario. You say, okay, let's create divisions and let everybody go their way and all that. This is the fear. This is the catastrophe, because you're going to have, I'm going to use a scenario that, once somebody in the past, about 2 weeks ago, had mentioned. He said, if you want to start having, let's say Amoteku or say IPOB, they have their own this thing, then you're going to have a country where your neighbor is actually a terrorist organization, a terrorist country, and you're going to be in perpetual warfare with your neighbor. And that is not going to be something that is sustainable in the long term. So, without going into details, I want to ensure that we understand the very critical situation that we find ourselves in and how important our actions going forward between now and 2023 is. That we have to begin to sensitize our friends, our families, our loved ones, and let them know we can't sit by the sidelines while the country burns down, because if we don't do anything and these guys succeeds in implementing their agenda and they succeed to get the victory in the electoral victory in 2023, that is a point of no return. And we can't get to that point. So with that, I know I have a couple of other, but I'm seeing some questions, and I'm going to open up the mute button so that I'll probably take remarks while I'm going through the questions. Let me see. Okay, if you want to, if you have any comments, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can unmute yourself now, and I'll take questions. I'll take the oral questions, the verbal questions, and after which I'll take the questions on the chat box. But we have some remarks to make in terms of, I went to this insecurity because I wanted to clear your mind and let you know what we're actually up against. When you see herdsmen invading farmlands, they are not invading farmlands because they want to look for how to graze their cattle. They are invading their farmlands in pushing the agenda of a non-state actor that had already provided them the guns and the equipment to actually push this agenda. So it's not about, let me tell you, I'm going to just make this as clear as possible as I can. If this issue was about rural grazing, if this issue was about trying to find, grazing for the cattle herdsmen, for the Fulani herdsmen, this would have been solved years ago. Because this would have been solved years ago. I'm going to mute. This would have been solved years ago because majority of the governors in the north, have already volunteered to give rural settlements in their states. I'm talking about majority of governors above the middle belt have already agreed to give up a huge portion of their states for rural settlements. And giving up those rural settlements, giving up their providing land for those rural settlements is for the government. This is not rocket science. The government would only come in and put schools beside those rural settlements, put primary healthcare centers beside those rural settlements, and then create allied industries around those rural settlements. Put cold storage, big cold rooms around those rural settlements where those herdsmen, when they want to preserve the beef before shipping to the south, they can preserve it, So they can create a whole industry around those rural settlements within the north. And they can create a lifestyle that those Fulani men has been complaining about. They don't have access to schools, they don't have access to hospital, healthcare, adequate healthcare. You can build all those around those rural settlements, and there is funding for that. And you can do that for each state in the north. And the Fulani herdsmen wouldn't have any reason to come to the south because they have everything they need for their livestock production in the north. They don't have to come to the south because then they have to now figure out those allied industries, those beef packaging, those cold storage, the schools, the primary healthcare centers, and all that. But those will provide in the north, and they can have access to that, and they wouldn't have to come down to the south. But no, that is not what they are looking for. They want rural settlement in every state. That is not reasonable. You cannot destroy one segment, one sector, one agricultural sector for another. The agricultural sector in the south is all about crop production. We cultivate, we harvest our crops from the ground. That is our livelihood. That is the way our ancestors have, the ancestors from people in the south have lived their lives for decades, for generations. They cultivate their crop production. So if you're bringing livestock from the north, what you're eventually saying is that the livestock from the north are going to now, let me make sure you guys have it. Livestock from the north will now completely practically destroy the lifestyle and the livelihoods of those farmers, those crop production, those farmers that has generations for generations been dependent on crop production. So you're practically destroying crop production and propping up livestock. And that's not how you run a country. You can't destroy one sector of the economy so that you can prop up another sector of the economy, when you have opportunity of actually propping both of them up by letting people that do crop production in the south continue their crop production, because they are vital components. They are an important component of our economy. And then let the people that are in the north, which the governors have willingly given them the settlements, the spaces to use for rural settlements. Let them set up their rural, create the conducive environment for them to settle down and do their rural grazing. That is the solution, but that is not a solution to the agenda for the non-state actors. And unfortunately, those non-state actors have infiltrated our parties, not our party, but the so-called two big parties. And my fear is that if those two parties, any of those two parties make it to Aso Rock in 2023, the non-state actors will now complete the final stages of the agenda, using the people, the individuals that have already been compromised within the leadership structure. Those leaders that were giving, that have been pushing for payment of ransom, payment of huge sums of money to these non-state actors. Those leaders that have been making sure that those non-state actors have access to weapons. Those are leaders in the military that, after they discuss on how to maybe bomb a camp somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the north, so you know, those leaders in the military send intelligence to the non-state actors wherever they're hiding in the forest. And before you go there, they've already dispersed, they've already cleared out, and there's nobody to bomb, because the intelligence is being leaked from the leadership in the military. So how can you win this war? How can you win this war? So it is a war that has to be won using the democratic process, requiring a leader that will begin to change the hearts and the minds, begin to call for national unity, begin to let everyone in Nigeria know that your enemy is not the neighbor. It's not your neighbor in the north, or it's not your neighbor in the west, or it's not your neighbor in the east. The enemy is working hard every day to divide us so as to perpetuate the agenda, and we must not let them win. So I'm going to let them, if you want to have any comments, feel free to unmute. I'm going to go into other areas, but feel free to ask your questions. Meanwhile, I'm going to take questions on the sideline, and